नमः विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नाम्ने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Yes, so anyone would like to share what we discussed in our last session?
Yeah, I think
Yes, good.
Ruchira has well summarized it
Hmm.
right after the session, which was quite helpful. So we started the recap of the previous session, which was the initial week session about having a bona fide spiritual master and how chanting Krishna's holy name purifies the consciousness. Then we touched upon discuss this difference between lust and greed, where
Hmm.
lust is a desire to enjoy more and more, and greed is a desire to accumulate more and more. But both, along with anger, are described as the gateways to hell
Correct.
in Bhagavad Gita. And then we discussed upon how the gateways of India and then the gateway to hell is like lust and greed. So we also touched upon lust's influence on desire, just as wearing the colored glasses changes our perception. So lust contaminates our desires, making us quite self-centered.
Hmm.
And we also touched upon transforming lust into devotion, which can be like lust can be spiritualized by redirecting desires towards Krishna,
Hmm.
like the way Hanuman has done it by through his controlling the anger, but by burning Lanka and anger, controlling his anger and directing it to Ram's service.
Hmm.
So righteous desire is a divine quality. So and then we've gone through 3.838 till 3.40 verses where it was described fire and smoke and how easy it is to remove the smoke fire from the fire and set it ablaze,
Hmm.
which is possible as a human form, and we can ablaze it through Krishna consciousness. It
Hmm.
is uh, what I have not understood is like you've said that like similarly when you on the mirror, if the dust forms, then if you
Hmm.
remove the dust, again the mirror shines and you can get Krishna, but that was compared to animals. And then
Hmm.
in the womb, where it is just the child is helpless.
Hmm.
So, and that is like he has no, it is all, there is no self-awareness, it's only the lust. And that's where he takes the form of trees
Hmm.
where he gets born. And then you discussed, touched, helped us with the Nalcover example. So what I was not clear was how, how if shouldn't it be as easy to remove smoke from fire as dust from the mirror? Embryo part, it is still clear that yes, it's difficult, it is totally helpless. But removing smoke from fire and uh, dust from mirror, shouldn't
Hmm.
that be equally easy? So why one is compared to human and the other is compared to being formed as an animal?
Correct. So removing smoke from the fire,
Mm-hmm.
like just a fire is covered by smoke, it's very easy to remove smoke. How? If you just blow little air or little bit fanning, if you do, immediately smoke can be removed, right? Same way, if we see removing dust from the mirror require much more endeavor, require much more energy to be spent, right? To remove dust from the mirror, you have to wipe it off with a cloth. Whereas in this, nothing is required, just you have to blow little air
Ah,
or you have to little bit
okay,
fan off, it will
okay,
get
okay,
completely removed.
okay. But can the animal make that effort? I mean, how can an animal make an effort? And
So,
he
yeah,
doesn't have the man.
correct. So in animal cases, what happens? They are completely under the control of nature.
Mm-hmm.
So gradually they have to just tolerate their karma once it get nullify or it get completely burned. So
Okay.
what happens? They take a human form of life
Mm-hmm.
in which again they get opportunity to get free from all these anarthas, or basically lust, and then they get a chance to get in touch with Krishna's teachings, to get in touch with bhakti or devotion. Then they can be liberated, they can get free from all kinds of bondage,
Okay. I mean,
right?
so basically, they don't have to do anything and they cannot do anything.
Yes, animals, they just have to go through the karma which is intent
Okay.
or meant for them to suffer. So
Okay.
that much they have to do. All right, that's why animal killing, basically what happens when we kill some animal, so we are uh, actually becoming an obstacle in the progress of that animal spiritual, that particular jiva spiritual life or spiritual journey. Suppose he is
But
an
what?
that animal is a deer.
Yeah.
We have killed that deer.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the next life he was supposed to, after completing his deer life, he was supposed to take up human form of life,
Mm-hmm.
and his dear life is supposed to be 20 years or 25 years. But
Mm-hmm.
at the age of 10 years we have killed that deer for our sense gratification or for eating or whatever purpose it may be. So what will happen, again he will take a birth as a deer and he will complete his 15 years, then he will get a chance to take a human
Um,
form of life. So we have played a part in obstructing his
mm.
journey by killing that animal. So
I,
that's why this killing of animal is very
I
heinous or very grave sin
I
in
have a
our society.
contradictory understanding from a different quote where Arjun was saying, I
Hmm.
don't remember that quote, but Arjuna said that, why should I kill? I don't want to kill my. It
Hmm.
was in chapter 2 only, so it was in
Hmm.
chapter 3, so like one of these earlier chapters only.
Chapter
Said, I
2,
don't
verse
want.
number 4 or 5 it is, I guess.
I don't remember which, but he said, I don't
Hmm.
want to kill. No, no, it was a little later. I remember from Mahabharata days that he said, I
Hmm.
don't want to kill. So then Krishna said that you are no one to kill. You are just a
Hmm.
mediator. I am the one who has already decided the start and end time of life. So even if
Hmm.
you try to kill, you cannot do that. You are just a mediator. I am the one
Hmm.
who's killing it. You are just a mediator.
Correct.
So it is then if we are killing, that means we are just a mediator. His life was already his end was already decided at this time. So even if one would not have killed, he would have been killed by someone else because the end
Hmm.
of life was already decided. So how
Hmm.
are we interfering in his overall cycle when his end was
Uh,
already decided?
yes, very important thing, very nice question. So the thing is, in the purport also we understand this thing. In purport, Prabhupada nicely explained this thing. Just like we can understand this scenario from one more example. For example, a person is there.
Mm-hmm.
He is an army officer. He is there on the border to fight to defend our nation. Now suppose war has begun and he received an order to fire or to kill the enemy. He killed various enemies and he receives various awards. He got an opportunity to visit his home, and next to his home, one neighbor is there who is living, and he had a somehow end up with some quarrel with the neighbor, and he killed his neighbor too. So what will happen? He will get punishment. He will be prosecuted in the court, and he has to go and undergo certain punishment as per the government's rules and regulation or jurisdictions. So if we see the activity is same,
Mm-hmm.
one activity he has performed on the order of government, one activity he has done whimsically. Same way here, Arjuna is killing on the order of
वीडियो
Supreme
वीडियो
Personality
बंद
of
कर
Godhead Krishna. Whereas if we kill, we are killing whimsically. So that killing whimsically is a punishable offense by the laws of nature. So we are killing animal for what purpose? To gratify our senses, for just taste. So we'll be prosecuted by the laws of nature. Laws of nation or laws of government may be excuse us, but laws of nature will not. Whatever natural calamities we are going through is because of killing of animals. So many
Where,
such
like you said,
problems. Yes.
purport, where was it? What part did you mention that this
I'll
has been?
share. Shall I
Okay.
share after this class
Yes,
exact
yes, yes, yes.
reference?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
It is in third or second chapter only. I'll look
Yes,
and I'll
please.
share it. All
Okay,
right.
sure.
We shall begin today's this thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have to begin from verse number 41. So yes, so far Arjuna was asking a question: what is that force which impel to commit sinful activities? So Krishna, in response to that, he answers immediately: Kamayesha Krodesha. It is lust, which is born from the contact of metal modes of passion and ignorance. Here in verse number, here Krishna is mentioning it is lust only. So lust impel a person to commit sinful activities. And how lust is born? By the contact of mode of passion and ignorance. So further, Krishna is explaining degrees of lust, different degrees of lust, and what is the position, what is the location. So here if we see very strategically, Krishna is introducing about our enemy. Who is our enemy? Eternal enemy, that is lust. Lust we understood earlier session. What is the definition of lust? And then Krishna is mentioning various degrees of lust. Then Krishna is here, if we see, very important thing is mentioning a man's pure consciousness is covered by eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like a fire, right? Which burns like a fire. Fire is all devouring, it destroys everything. It goes into every direction. It is not like unidirectional, it is omnidirectional. It goes in every direction, right? All the direction is covered. So same way lust is like that. And then further Krishna is mentioning the location where lust, sitting place of the lust is senses, mind and intelligence. That is the sitting place of lust. So very strategically Krishna is bringing this thing, and now he is giving the solution how to defeat this enemy. Just like in a war field, to win over an enemy, you need to have a strategy. Same way Krishna is very strategically he's presenting this. First he introduced with the enemy, second he mentioned the strength of an enemy, then he mentioned various degrees of an enemy and his location. Now he's going to mention how we can curb down or how we can defeat this enemy. How we can defeat this enemy. So please join in chanting this shloka. Tasmat tvam indrani adau
तस्मात्त्वमेव इन्द्रियाणादौ
niyama bharatarshava
नियमं तव
papmanam prajahiyenam
नियमा भरतर्षभा
Pamanan prajatemam
jnana vijnana nashanam.
ज्ञान
ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्
विज्ञाननाशनम् प्रजाधियेयम्
Yes, anyone would like to chant this shloka?
ज्ञान
तस्
विज्ञान
इन्द्रियाणां नियमं भरतर्षभ पम्पमानं पजयेन ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्
Yes, anyone else?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Tasmat tvam indriyani yado niyam bharatarshava पापमानं प्रजहिहेनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्.
Yes, anyone else?
तस्मात् त्वमिन्द्रियाणि आदौ नियमाय भरतर्षभ पापमानं प्रजाहि एनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्.
Wonderful. Yes, anyone else?
तस्मात् त्वाम् इन्द्रियाणि नियम्य
Little loudly.
पापं प्राजाहि ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्.
Wonderful. Yes, someone else? Yes, someone else would like to try? Alright, we'll read the translation. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So here, very nice point Krishna has brought. First thing is, he's telling very beginning only you should destroy this enemy. How? By regulating the senses. Why senses? Because senses is the sitting place of lust. Because every time senses dictate us that I want this, I want that, I want to enjoy, suppose some eatable item, I want to enjoy some beautiful form, I want to smell something, nice fragrance, I want to hear some soothing things. So every time our senses are dictating us some kind of pleasure or some kind of enjoyment, senses are always demanding. Nowadays, if we see, it has become even more prominent because everything is there on our fingertips. So we have become even more impatient. Just like I want to eat something, let me order on Zomato, Swiggy, all these apps. Within 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I can get whatever I want. I want to see something, I have mobile phone, let me open it up, let me see it, let me watch it, let me satisfy my senses. Netflix is there, everything is there on our fingertips. So what is happening in Kali Yuga? It is becoming even more difficult. Now, what this lust does, it is a destroyer of knowledge. A person who want to gratify his senses, independently he want to enjoy, or a person who is lusty, he will never ever get an interest in Krishna Katha. He will never ever able to develop his knowledge, his spiritual knowledge, which will liberate him. In the second chapter also Krishna brought this point. What he was saying, Bhog Aishwarya Prasaktanam. Till the time, yes, till the time we want to enjoy our senses, we cannot develop devotion for the Lord. We cannot develop devotion for the Lord. Which verse it was? Shubhankar ji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, which verse it was? Verse number you remember?
Yes, Bhagavad Prasaktanam Sahayapurta Chesam. It's second chapter. It's 45.
45.
Just a minute, sir. 45, I think.
Yeah, it's near around 40 only. Let me check.
44.
44. Okay. 2.44.
भोगैश्वर्य प्रसक्तानां तावत्
Yes.
चेतसा
44.
व्यावसायिक बुद्धिरेको समाधौ बुद्धि समाधौ न विद्यते.
Correct. Here Krishna is clearly mentioning, if you see, in the mind of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So same thing here Krishna is mentioning in the Bhagavad Gita again in the 3rd chapter. What is saying? Knowledge, self-realization. It is a destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. One will not be able to realize the self. What is the meaning of realizing the self? Who am I? I am a spirit soul. And this spirit soul is what? Is a part and parcel of that Supreme Lord. He will not able to realize this. And when he is not able to realize this, he will not able to act upon that knowledge. Will not be able to act upon that knowledge. We'll read the purport first, then we'll come to more detail. We'll try to understand. The Lord advised Arjuna to regulate the senses from the very beginning so that he could curb the greatest sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self-realization and specifically knowledge of the self. Jnanam refers to knowledge of self as distinguished from non-self, or in other words, knowledge that the spirit soul is not the body. Vijnanam refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul and knowledge of one's constitutional position and his relationship to the supreme soul. So what is Jnanam? Knowledge here in Bhagavad Gita, or Krishna when he mentions Jnanam, is refers to the knowledge of the self. Who is the real self? Just like when I say this is my hand. I don't say this is me. I say this is my hand. This is my head. This is my eyes. These are my eyes. Right? I don't say I am this. I am this. No, this is my hand. It belongs to me. So who am I? I am that spirit soul. And who is that spirit soul? Spirit soul is part and parcel of that Supreme Lord. So that is the knowledge of self. And in detail, what is the relationship of this spirit soul with the Supreme Lord, Super Soul, and how this spirit soul has come in this particular position, awkward situation, or in this material world, and what is this material world, what is my relationship with this material world. All this, if we try to understand, is nothing but Jnanam, knowledge of the self. So knowledge of the self includes knowledge about everything. Knowledge about everything. And the person who has realized here, Vijnanam refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul and knowledge of one's constitutional position and his relationship to the Supreme Soul. So the person, Vijnanam means the person who has realized this knowledge. Here in 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, first verse, Krishna is mentioning this. Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshami anasuyave jnana vijnana sahitam yat kyatva mokshase subhat. He is telling, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom, knowing which shall be relieved of miseries of material existence. So here Krishna is mentioning Jnana Vijnana Sahitam, with the knowledge, and by the realization of that knowledge, you can be freed from the material miseries. We all are suffering, going through various kind of pains in our life. Somebody is suffering financially, somebody is suffering emotionally, somebody is suffering socially. In different ways, each and every jiva is suffering. Or if we summarize our suffering. Our suffering is birth, death, and old age. Birth, death, old age, and disease. Each and everyone is going through. And all these are very, very painful. Right? Very, very painful. So, a person who is properly situated in knowledge, who has realized this knowledge, can be freed from the miseries, shall be relieved. Krishna is mentioning shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Right? We read further. It is explained thus in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Jnanam param guhyam me yad vijnana samanvitam sarhasyam tad angam cha grahana gaditam maya. The knowledge of the self and the supreme self is very confidential and mysterious, being wielded by Maya, but such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if it is explained by the Lord Himself. So Srimad Bhagavatam is saying this knowledge of the self and the supreme self is very, very confidential. Same thing Krishna is mentioning in the beginning of this 9th chapter. What is saying? Idam tute guhyatamam. Guhyatamam means most confidential. One is guhya. Guhya means confidential. Guhyatarar means more confidential. But here Krishna is using superlative degree. Guhyatamam means most confidential knowledge. And that most confidential knowledge Krishna is revealing in Bhagavad Gita. He is revealing in Bhagavad Gita. We'll read further. Bhagavad Gita gives us that knowledge, specifically knowledge of the self, the living entities and part and parcel of the Lord, and therefore they are simply meant to serve the Lord. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So here, as we know, we are the living entity, we are the Jiva, we are the spirit soul, we are Nityam, we are eternal. And we belong to that Supreme Lord. Because we are His part and parcel, Krishna is mentioning that Mamevamsha Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So we belong to Him. And when we start acting on that platform, how? By serving Him, by chanting His holy name, by hearing about Him. In different ways when we engage in His service. So what happens? We realize this knowledge. We realize this knowledge. So from the very beginning of life, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness, and thereby one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. Lust is the only perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness from the very beginning, that natural love of God cannot deteriorate into lust. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotional service. So from any stage of life or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord, and turn the lust into love of Godhead, the highest perfectional stage of human life. So here one can understand the goal of human form of life is to develop love for that supreme personality of Godhead. But what happens as soon as we take birth, we come in contact with the various material, we come in contact with this material nature. What happened? Our real love transforms into lust. Here Krishna is mentioning previous verse. What he is saying? Kamesha Krodesha Rajodguna Samudbhava. It is lust only which is born with the material modes of passion and later transformed into word. So this lust is born from how? From the contact of material nature. Now, when a person associate with Krishna, how? By chanting his holy name. Nam namino abhinitvam. There is no difference between Nama and Namino. Nama means holy name of that Supreme Lord. Namino means that same Supreme Lord. There is no difference. So when we chant the holy name of the Lord, actually we are directly touching Krishna. We are directly in association with Krishna. So when we are in direct association with Krishna, so what happens? This lust again transforms into love. Because with the contact of this material nature, what happened over a period of time, we develop lust. Somebody will have less, somebody will have more. There will be different degrees to it, but everyone is having. But as soon as somebody begins this process, he gets free from all this contamination. Earlier session, as I was mentioning, sometimes we think, oh, why now? We can do it later when we get older. That time we can take up this Krishna consciousness. But what happens? As we get old, it becomes even more difficult. Because that time neither our mind is supporting us, nor our body is supporting us. So neither mind is supporting nor body is supporting. So how you will fight with this enemy? Just like some session I narrated one story that one of the minister of Akbar fell ill, and this Akbar he wanted to understand that when we get old, we will lose interest in sense enjoyment. So Birbal was telling, no sir, it is not like that. One will not lose interest in sense enjoyment even though he may get old. So once one of the minister he fell sick, so this Birbal told Akbar, you took your daughter also along with you. Let us visit this minister. Youngest daughter you should take. So what happened? When this sick minister he saw younger daughter, he could not take off his eyes from that daughter because she was very beautiful. He could not take off his eyes. He is not looking at Akbar. Even though he is responding to Akbar, he is looking at the daughter of Akbar. Same way, it is not at all easy. As and when we get older, it becomes even more difficult to control the senses or to get rid of this lust. So one has to Kaumara Macharat Pragno. Prahlad Maharaj says, at the age of 5, Kaumara means at the age of 5, one should begin his devotional service. One should begin his devotional service. Just like you are driving on a road. So it is very tough. If your vehicle is very heavy, it's very tough to control that vehicle, to drive that vehicle. You want to take a turn, it will take a lot of time to make a simple U-turn. Whereas if the vehicle is very light, very small, you can immediately make a turn. So same way, it is very, very important that one should curb down this tendency to enjoy the senses, because this lust is all devouring like a fire. It will destroy everything, and in Kali Yuga one can see the effect of this thing. Many people are committing suicide Many such things are happening. Why? Because of this simple thing, which is an eternal enemy of the living entity, that is lust. Because of this, destruction is happening. Alright, so we'll move to the next verse number 42. Indriyani parahur indriyabhe param manaha manastu parabuddhir yo buddhir parastu saha. Translation: the working senses are superior to dull matter, and mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So now here Krishna is making a hierarchy. What hierarchy? Earlier he mentioned how senses is the sitting place of lust. Senses, mind and intelligence are the sitting place of lust. Now it is not easy to defeat senses. Just like in an army, when on a war field, when war is going on, so to defeat an enemy you should be very strong. Many times we see in some news coverage and all, they show their strength, what kind of weapons the army is having, and how powerful these weapons are, and how much efficient they are in combating with enemies' weapons, especially in air force or some missiles. Always this comparison is given or shown to the people in general. Same way here Krishna is doing. This senses, mind. So here one more thing is very important to understand. Krishna is mentioning the working senses are superior to dull matter. If we see senses, there are two types of senses. One is working senses, one is knowledge acquiring senses. So these eyes, nose, tongue, ears, all these are knowledge acquiring senses. We acquire certain kind of knowledge through these senses, right? So these senses, eyes is nothing, like it is just a matter. It's a lump of flesh. It is again some matter only. So here why Krishna is mentioning the working senses are superior to dull matter. This body, if we see, is dull matter. This table, this is also dull matter. But here Krishna is specifically mentioning working senses are superior to dull matter. Why it is so? Because we being spirit soul, Jivatma, this spirit soul is also having senses. This spirit soul is also having senses. Has a tendency to see, has a tendency to taste, all that is there. But all these tendencies are fulfilled through these dull matter senses, through this material eyes, through this material nose. Only we can sense in this material world. Just like to see a cell or a very minute object, you need a microscope. You need a microscope. Same way, to interact with matter, this spirit soul, even though having senses, it requires material senses. So these senses are superior to dull matter, and higher than senses is mind. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So here, the hierarchy Krishna has brought is there are senses. Senses can be controlled by mind. Mind is superior than the senses, and superior than the mind is intelligence, and superior than the intelligence is we, spirit soul. We, spirit soul, are superior than the intelligence, mind, and senses. So Krishna is straight away giving that hint. By your spiritual energy, you can control your mind, intelligence, and senses. Next verse he is going to mention clearly. We read the purport. We will try to understand more in detail. The senses are different outlets for activities of lust. Lust is reserved within the body, but it is given vent through the senses. Therefore, the senses are superior to the body as a whole. Those outlets are not in use when there is a superior consciousness or Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, soul makes direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the bodily functions as described here ultimately end in Supreme Soul. Bodily action means the function of the senses, and stopping the senses means stopping all bodily actions. But since the mind is active, then even though body may be silent and at rest, the mind will act as it does during dreaming. Just like when we are sleeping, our entire body is inactive, but mind is active. We experience various kind of dreams. Sometimes horrible, sometimes sweet. We experience such kinds of dreams. But above the mind, there is a determination of intelligence. Above the intelligence is the soul proper. If therefore the soul is directly engaged with the Supreme, naturally all other subordinates, namely the intelligence, mind, and senses, will be automatically engaged. In the Katha Upanishad, there is a passage in which it is said that the object of sense gratification are superior to the senses, and the mind is the superior to the sense objects. If therefore the mind is directly engaged in the service of the Lord constantly, then there is no chance of the senses becoming engaged in other ways. This mental attitude has already been explained. If the mind is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no chance of being engaged in the lower propensities. In the Katha Upanishad, the soul has been described as Mahan, the great. Therefore, the soul is above all, namely the sense objects, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. Therefore, directly understanding the constitutional position of the soul is the solution of whole problem. So, we'll read it, finish this also, then we'll understand in detail. With intelligence, one has to seek out the constitutional position of the soul and then engage the mind always in Krishna consciousness. That solves the whole problem. A neophyte spiritualist is generally advised to keep aloof from the objects of senses. One has to strengthen the mind by use of intelligence. If by intelligence one engages one's mind in Krishna consciousness by complete surrender onto the personality of Godhead, then automatically the mind becomes stronger, even though senses are very strong like serpent. They will be no more effective than serpent with broken fangs. Very nice analogy. But even though the soul is master of intelligence and mind, the senses are also still useless. It is strengthened by the association with Krishna. In Krishna consciousness, there is every chance of falling down due to the agitated mind. So we will try to understand this through a example or an analogy. Earlier also I think I have mentioned this. Suppose there is a chariot and this chariot is having 5 horses, and there is a chariot driver, and you are also situated on the chariot as a passenger. So now suppose these horses are acting very whimsically or are not controlled or are very difficult to control or are very naughty, which is not easy to control. So the way to control these horses is either this chariot driver has to be very, very strong, or these horses has to be trained or has to be replaced. So same way, if we try to understand these horses, 5 horses with our senses, and the rope or the reins which is used to control these horses is our mind, the chariot driver to be an intelligent, our intelligence, and we being the passenger. Now suppose these horses are not under control. If our intelligence is very strong, means chariot driver is very strong, he can easily tame the horses, he can easily control the horses, and he can give us a smooth ride. We can experience a smooth ride. But suppose this chariot driver is not strong. So what will happen? Even though he may try, he'll not be able to control or tame the horses, and horses will go in whatever direction they want, and you will have very unpleasing experience or ride, or you will not be able to reach to the destination. Just like this human form of life is meant for what? To develop love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. But suppose if our senses are not controlled, are not tamed, so what will happen? We'll not be able to reach our destination. We'll not be able to reach our destination. So intelligence, which is guided by what? Spirit, soul. So one need to have a tapas shakti. One need to have tapas shakti or spiritual strength by which this intelligence can tame the horses. Intelligence is using one instrument. What is that? Mind. This rope, just like chariot driver is using rope to control the horses. Same way, intelligence is using this instrument called mind to control the senses. Previous chapter also Krishna is mentioning, if our intelligence, Vyavasaya Atmika Buddhi Eka Kuru Nandana, if our intelligence is aligned with Krishna's intelligence, with the intelligence, Krishna's intelligence, or with the scriptures, we can easily tame or control our senses. But here, very nice point Prabhupada has mentioned. But even though the soul is the master of intelligence and mind, the senses are also, still unless it is strengthened by the association with Krishna in Krishna consciousness, there is every chance of falling down due to agitated mind. Suppose now in this same chariot, intelligence is strong, chariot driver is strong, but all of a sudden this rope breaks down. Rope get ruptured by which he was controlling the horses. So again, he is in same situation. The senses or this horse are untamed or uncontrolled. They are roaming here and there. So continuously, this chariot driver has to check whether ropes are proper or not. He has to replace the ropes time to time. Same way, we strengthen our mind, our intelligence by associating with Krishna, by chanting his holy name, by hearing about Krishna, by associating with his devotees. What we are doing, we are strengthening our rope by which we can tame the horses or our senses. Otherwise, this mind will get agitated and we will fall down. Same thing is mentioned in the Bhagavatam. I'll share that. And same thing Krishna is mentioning for the mind. What he is saying in the 6th chapter, he is saying, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. Here.
Chapter 6, 34. Chapter 6, 34 verse.
Here he is mentioning Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. What he is saying, mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. To subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Arjuna, being the Maharati, the great warrior, he is mentioning mind is very restless, very difficult to control or subdue. I can control the wind, he is mentioning Arjuna, but I cannot control the mind. So see how tough it is. But how it can be controlled, that is mentioned in Bhagavatam and various places. Krishna is also mentioning in Bhagavad Gita. We'll read this. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the protector of devotees. We'll read the next one. With the sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? So here, basically this, in Naimisharanya, these Goswamis are discussing various things with the Suta Goswami. So that discussion is going on. So they are into this discussion about how one can control or win over this mode of passion and how one can get free from all kinds of anartha and lust. This is what discussion is going on. So here again it is mentioned, O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. So now here, Suta Goswami is mentioning, by rendering service to the great devotees who are free from all kinds of vices, we develop an affinity to hear about the glories of that Supreme Lord Vasudeva, Krishna. And what happens when we hear his glories? What will happen? That is mentioned in the next verse. What it is mentioned? Shranvatam swakatha Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridya anta asthahi abhadrani vidunoti sukritasatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is a Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his message, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So, what happens when somebody hears about Krishna's message, Krishna's glories? Krishna himself destroys the material desires or the desires which are meant to enjoy this material nature will be cleared off, and one develops the urge to hear his message. Same thing Krishna is mentioning in 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Anyone remembers? He says, Satatam kirtayanto mam vitantasya dridavata.
In chapter 9, in 9:14, the 14th verse.
What is that? 9th, 14th verse? No, not that one. Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupyantite.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10, verse 10, I get.
Yes.
Yes. We'll read this. Here. To those
Krishna
who are
Prabhuji.
constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So our constant devotion, Tesham Satata Yuktanam, when we serve Krishna, Bhajtam Priti Purvakam, Bhajna means serving Krishna, engage in his devotional service. How? Priti Purvakam, with love. When we engage in serving Krishna, he says, I give the understanding by which they can come. Who can come? My devotees who are engaged in serving. Next, what he is saying? To show them special mercy, I dwell in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So here Krishna is mentioning, I dwell in the heart of my devotees, and what I do? I destroy the darkness. How? By shining lamp of knowledge. By giving them knowledge, I destroy the darkness. I destroy the darkness. So this knowledge, jnanam, is very important, and this jnanam Krishna has very mercifully given in the form of Bhagavad Gita to all of us. We'll read the next verse. Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhakti nashtaki. By regular attendance in the class on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental song, is established as an irrevocable fact. So what happens when we hear about Krishna or Krishna's message, his glories, and render service to his pure devotees like Prabhupada? So what happens? All the abhadras, all the things which are there in our heart, which are disturbing us, creating disturbance, many times some kind of anxiety is there, some kind of depression is there, lust, greed, anger, all these things are deep rooted in our heart, and because of these things there is whole problems are happening in our life. So many problems we go through because of these things. But what happens as soon as we chant the holy name of the Lord, or as soon as we hear his transcendental message, all these things are destroyed. All these things are destroyed. And after all these things get destroyed, what happened? Bhaktir Bhagavati Nashtaki. Irrevocable bhakti means unflinching faith in Krishna is developed. Krishna's bhakti is developed. And that is what is required. Human form of life, just now we read, the goal of human form of life is to develop that love that is developed. And how it is developed? Nishtha means with full unflinching love is developed. And further it is mentioned, Tada rajas tamo bhava kama labhyates chaye cheta yeter anavidham sitam sattve prasiditi. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. He becomes completely happy. See? So what happens when we hear about the glories of the Supreme Lord, when we hear His holy name, when we hear His message, what happens? All the abhadras in our heart are destroyed, all the inauspicious things are destroyed, all the elements which are disturbing or giving trouble to our heart is destroyed. After that, what is happening? Unflinching faith, a love for the Lord is developed. And then when this loving service we offer to the Lord, we get free from the effect of mode of passion and ignorance. And this is what Krishna is mentioning. Kamesha krodesha rajoguna samudbhava. This kama, lust, is born from mode of passion. So as soon as we get free from this mode of passion and ignorance, what happens? We get free from lust and desires to enjoy material nature, and hankering disappears from our heart. And when these things disappears, so what will remain? Complete goodness, and devotee will be completely joyful and he will be happy. He can experience that bliss. That's why many times a person who is engaged very sincerely in devotional service of that Supreme Lord, every moment he experiences this kind of bliss. He experiences this kind of bliss. Yes, we'll read this purport. So anyone would like to read this purport? Please read so that we can hear.
Am I audible, Prabhuji? Hare Krishna.
Yes, audible.
The soul's activity becomes adulterated in contact with matter, and as such the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. The effect of devotional service becomes manifest by complete elimination of these effects of passion and ignorance. The devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness, and he makes further progress to rise to the position of Vasudeva, or the state of unmixed sattva, or Shuddha sattva. Only on this Shuddha sattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord. Devotee is always in the mode of unalloyed goodness. Therefore, he harms no one. But the non-devotee, however educated he may be, is always harmful. A devotee is neither foolish nor passionate. The harmful, foolish, and passionate cannot be devotees of the Lord. However, they may advertise themselves as devotees by outward dress. A devotee is always qualified with all the good qualities of God. Quantitatively, such qualifications may be different, but qualitatively, both the Lord and his devotees are one and the same. Hare Krishna.
So, thank you. So here very nice points Prabhupada is mentioning. Same thing what Krishna is mentioning in Bhagavad Gita also. So what happens when this devotional service, when we hear about Krishna, his glories, his holy name, we get free from all such propensities, and devotee attain a mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, he is always joyful, happy, and when he raised to such position, he can see Krishna face to face. With the power of his pure devotion, he can see Krishna. He can feel the presence of Krishna, and eventually he can see Krishna also face to face. So that is the power of devotion, or the spiritual activities, or this process of Krishna consciousness. One can easily control the mind by the spiritual strength. So this jnanam, when we acquire this knowledge, what happens? Our intelligence becomes strong. We develop Vyavasaya Atmika Buddhi. And we spiritually also become strong. We acquire Tapas Shakti, spiritual strength. And with both these things, we can easily control our mind. We can easily control our mind. We move to the next verse. Verse number 43. Evam budva param budva samstabhyamaatma nam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kama rupa durasadam. Translation. Thus knowing oneself to be the transcendental to material senses, mind and intelligence, one should control lower self by the higher self, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Kama rupena durasadam. Insatiable. Krishna is mentioning this enemy as formidable, insatiable, which cannot be win over. But one can simply win over this enemy by the higher self, by the spiritual strength. By the spiritual strength, one can conquer this enemy by tapas shakti. And how one can acquire tapas shakti? By engaging ourselves in spiritual activities, just as chanting the holy name of the Lord, hearing his glories, any activities which are directly in relation with Krishna. When we engage in such activities, what happens? We can, even a person will not know how easily, how smoothly he is able to control his senses. It will become very sulabha, very easy to control the senses. We'll read this purport, then we'll try to understand more in detail. This third chapter of Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without considering impersonal voidness as the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by the propensities for lust and desire for dominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overloading and sense gratification are the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden. But by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind by steady intelligence directed towards one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic posture can never help a man toward a spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. Very nice points Prabhupada has mentioned in this purport. Once Narad Muni, he was traveling and he visited Prayagraj. Recently, Mahakumbh was observed at Prayagraj. So after returning from Prayagraj, Narad Muni happened to see some animals and they were groaning with lot of pain. They were suffering like anything. And Narad Muni, being a pure devotee, he is so compassionate, he is not able to see the suffering of these animals, and they are suffering because they were half killed. Some animal has been stuck with some arrow on their leg, some on hands, like that they are struggling and suffering. So Narad Muni, being a pure devotee, he relieved all of these animals from their painful situation or the suffering that they were going through. But he wanted to figure out what is the cause of their suffering. So he, started looking for the cause of suffering for these animals. And all of a sudden he saw one hunter is there who is the cause of the suffering for these animals, who is killing these animals and not completely killing, half killing he is doing. They are suffering with the pain. So now what happened? As soon as this hunter saw Narad Muni, he tried to hide himself because he has never ever seen such a personality. Sadhu he has not seen. So he hidden himself back of the tree, and Narad Muni shouted or called this hunter. What means, have you done this? Have you killed these animals? Are you the cause of their suffering? So very unhesitatingly, this hunter replies, yes, I have killed these animals. Then Narad Muni says, why you are killing them half? You could have killed them full. At least they should not have gone through this suffering. He says, I have learned this art from my father. My father has learned it from my grandfather. And like this, generation after generation, we are killing these animals in the same way, and it gives a great joy, great sense of joy it gives. So Narad Muni says, do you know you also have to suffer in the same way? You also have to go through the same suffering, same kind of pain that you are giving to these animals. Being in association with Narad Muni, who is a pure devotee, he came to his senses, because by the association of pure devotees, sadhu sanga, sarva shastra kaya, lava matra sadhu sanga, sarva siddhi hai. Just for a fraction of second, if one associate with the pure devotee of the Lord, one can understand the purport of all the scriptures and one can attain all kind of siddhis. So same way this hunter, he developed some kind of submissiveness to hear more from Narad Muni. So he approached, yes, you are rightly mentioning that I have to go through this pain. Please tell me how I can be relieved from such pain or such sinful activities. So Narad Muni says, you have to first of all throw off this bow and arrow. Then he mentions, if I will throw this bow and arrow, how I will survive. How I will maintain myself, maintain my livelihood? That Narad Muni says, you no need to worry. It will be supplied to you. Then what I have to do? Narad Muni says, you have to engage yourself in serving Krishna, in chanting his holy name. So you throw off all your this bow and arrow, whatever you have, give away everything in the charity and chant the holy name of the Lord. So he follows all the instructions of the Narad Muni as it is, and he started chanting the holy name. So as soon as he started chanting the holy name, and he was a great hunter who knew nothing but hunting, so this news spread like a fire to all the surrounding villages. Now everybody is like, this hunter has become a devotee. He is chanting the holy name of the Lord. He has left all this hunting profession. So everyone is wondered. Everyone is surprised. So everyone is now visiting this hunter who has become a devotee. So as a culture, if you visit somebody, you carry something for that person, some gifts. So all these people, they are carrying, somebody is carrying fruits, somebody is carrying some vegetables, groceries, this, that. So every day, so many people are visiting. So what is happening? This hunter is having more than sufficient. He is not able to consume all these items. He is getting more than required. So he was thinking that my spiritual master Narad Muni told it will be supplied. Now he is sending more than I require. What I will do? So then what happened? One day Narad Muni, he visited. He was along with his brother Parvat Muni. So Narad Muni he visited. He thought, let me visit. So Parvat Muni says, whom you are going to visit? He said, there is one hunter who is my disciple. Let me visit him. So Parvat Muni says, you have all different kinds of disciple. Some snake is your disciple. Some child is your disciple. Some demon is your disciple. Now you have hunter also as a disciple. So this Narad Muni, he visits his disciple known as this hunter Migari. So as soon as Migari came to know that my spiritual master Narad Muni is visiting me, he left everything and he is running towards Narad Muni. Sometime he is hoping, sometime different way he is walking, not able to walk properly. So Parvat Muni was expressing his doubt whether your disciple hunter has some problem in the legs. So Narad Muni says, okay, let him come, we will ask what is the problem. So as soon as this Mrigari comes, he offers his dandavats, obeisances, namaskar to both Parvat Muni and Narad Muni. And Parvat Muni asks, why you were walking like that? Sometime you were hoping, sometime you were, different ways you are walking, not able to walk properly. Do you have some problem? So he says, no. He says, no, there were a lot of ants were there. I don't want to step on those ants. I don't want to step on those ants and kill those ants. That's why I was walking like that. So same way, if we see the hunter who was killing and lot of animals, now don't want to kill even an ant. So such transformation one can experience by practicing Krishna consciousness. This insatiable enemy which Krishna is mentioning can be defeated only by engaging in Krishna conscious activities. By engaging in Krishna conscious activities, by engaging in Krishna service, one can easily defeat such a strong or insatiable enemy. Otherwise, whatever ways and means we may try, it is very, very difficult. That's why Krishna is mentioning insatiable enemy. But it can be easily defeated by our spiritual strength. And how we can get spiritual strength? By engaging ourselves in Krishna's service, by chanting his holy name. Right? Yes. So with this, we will end here. Anyone has anything to share or ask, please feel free to share or ask. Yes, any
Hare
questions?
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have some short questions. I was unable to grab 100% the meaning of those verses. So we mentioned in the second verse, I guess, what we discussed. What do you mean by dull matter?
Yes, dull
Like dull
matter
matter
is
is lower than the senses.
yes, dull matter is basically sense object. One can understand it as a sense object. Also, uh, this all whatever matter is there around us, suppose table is there or some other things are there, which is not having any consciousness, because these senses are also matter. But these senses gain consciousness how? Through this spirit soul, right? So, same way, these dull matters are nothing but a matter which is not having consciousness. Matter which is not having consciousness, or it can be referred to sense objects also, right? Hope this
Thank
thing
you.
is clear.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. And I have two more questions actually
Yeah.
related to the same discussion we had. So we discussed about that in the later stage of life, even the devotee who acquires Krishna consciousness, he can also
Hmm.
get fall in love with Krishna. But in younger stage, like Prabhu Prahlad Maharaj says that one has to be a devotee since
Hmm.
the age of 5. So we
Hmm.
see that if circumstances or surroundings are not accommodative in
Hmm.
home, or if not every person is a devotee, so how can like a child of a newborn or actually a child of 5 year can be inclined towards Krishna's service? How is this possible, Prabhu?
Yes, so that is the duty of a parent. Parents. That's what Bhagavatam is saying. Guru na sisyat, pita na sisyat, matra na sisyat, janani na sisyat. One should not become a mother, one should not become a father, one should not become a husband, one should not become a guru until and unless he is qualified to liberate the relation he is going to accept. Suppose somebody want to become a parent, want to conceive a child. So they should not conceive the child until and unless they are qualified or they give opportunity to the child to liberate from this material existence. So that is the duty of a parent. We see many times we say, parents are worshipable, they should be worshipped. Why they should be worshipped? What is, if they are playing their duty very responsibly, then they should be worshipped. Parents also have responsibility to play, to fulfill. What is their responsibility? Is to introduce Krishna consciousness or to imbibe Krishna consciousness to their children's. That is the duty of a parent. But nowadays it is a Kali Yuga, an unfortunate situation, condition we all are in. So that's why Prabhupada has established this movement. And fortunately, we have got this chance to get in touch with this knowledge. So we should take benefit of this knowledge and make our life successful. So it's a very unfortunate condition nowadays. In general, parents are very ambitious. Many times we see they neglect even their own child. Recently, 1 year back or something, there was a news, a mother killed her own son, just to, you know, become CEO or something, to acquire some position. She killed her own son. So it is a very precarious condition. This Kali Yuga is not easy. But somehow by the causeless mercy of Krishna, we have got this opportunity, so we should take full benefit and make our life successful. That's why preaching is very, very important. Yes. Hope this helps you.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. And just last question, Prabhuji,
Hmm.
like you also mentioned that soul also has senses. So how can
Hmm.
we observe this particular aspect of ourselves, observing in ourselves, like which proves also that soul has senses?
Yes. So we are able to see, just like suppose there is a mobile phone is there, that mobile phone is working. How we can understand this mobile phone is working? I am able to receive some calls. I am able to make some calls. All the functionality this mobile phone is supposed to perform, I'm able to do all those things. It means mobile is working. Suppose this mobile phone display is not getting on, means this mobile phone is no more working. Same way, we being a spirit soul, we are able to perform certain functionalities through these senses, and this soul, it may be very, very minute, but this soul also have Swarupa, means one form. It also has limbs, hands. It also has legs and various other senses. And through those, and if you, there is one scientist, Indian scientist only. He helped various people who has lost their limbs. Suppose somebody has lost their hand, right hand, left hand. So what happened? They lose all kinds of confidence. But he tried to awake their subtle limbs with certain training, which give them all kinds of strength, and they feel that yes, they didn't lose their right hand, left hand, whatever it is, and they engage in their routine work. They engage in their routine work, and they are able to perform their routine work as they were able to perform earlier. So these senses the soul is having are very subtle. We cannot conceive or see through our material eyes or naked eyes or material senses. But these things are working, we can see by observing our real senses, that our real senses are working or functioning, or these senses of soul is acting through these material senses. It is a little, difficult to understand, but soul is not like some point or some, energy. It is, it has its own form. Soul has its own form. And Krishna, when he mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, just like Hridaya Desha Arjuna Tishtati, I am seated in everyone's heart. Some place he is mentioning Sarvasacham Hriday Sannivishto, I am sitting in everyone's heart. So it is, he is not mentioning this material heart. Krishna is mentioning heart there as heart of that spirit soul. Krishna is sitting. So we, being that spiritual being, spirit soul, Krishna is sitting inside the heart of that spirit soul. Krishna is sitting inside the heart of that spirit soul. So Krishna give us that ability to enjoy all these senses, to enjoy or experience our senses. It is up to us whether we enjoy these senses to exploit the nature, or we enjoy our senses for the pleasure of the Lord. That choice we have to make. For this, we have to utilize our intelligence. That's why intelligence has to be trained. We have to be trained. That is the difference between us and animals. Hope this helps.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yes. So shall we end here? Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki,
जय
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki,
जय
Jai.
जय
Jai.
Hare Krishna,
हरे कृष्णा
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.